you're talking about trust between the customer and the sales team, SE, sales, marketing, right from the get go.
Hmm.
But
I think it's trust with the
there's
whole organization, right?
yeah,
Whatever company I represent as a salesperson or you represent as an engineer, it's about
yeah,
trusting all of it. But yeah, go ahead.
right. But there's the second part of trust that has nothing to do with the customer,
Hmm.
where we sometimes see issues. It's the salesperson and their SE, right?
Hmm.
And I kind of talk a lot about how SEs can build trust with their salespeople. How
Hmm.
can salespeople build trust with their SEs, and what do they want from their SEs to have trust in them as well?
That is a great question. And first thing is, salespeople need to stop being jerks, right? Stop thinking you know it all. You don't. That's the first thing, right? So I will gladly support that. I think that open dialogue is important. I think the
Yep.
challenge is I'm going to get super deep and I'm going to oversimplify something. Most, not all salespeople are very quick, right? Short, quick, short sentences. Yes, no, let's go. Come on, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Well, that's the kind of the complete opposite of what a solutions or sales engineer needs to do. That role requires you to slow down, take a breath, think it through for a minute. Now, sales can generally be good at that part, that slowing down, taking a breath when it gets to contract negotiations. They're like, okay, now let me step back. But because we're not engineering minded and I don't want to know how the bits and the bytes work. I really don't. We just think it's simple. It's like, oh, oh, you are interested in us here. Hold for my solutions engineer. Like, here's my sales. I expect you to close it. Like, that person needs to go away. That salesperson. So the first thing is I think salespeople need to slow down. I think salespeople have to also self-educate. If I'm going to work with you and you and I have never worked together, I'm not going to wait for that one meeting, the 1 30-minute call. Hey, let's prep for this client call. I'm going to send you an email that says, hey, what can you share with me that I can read on my own so that when we have our 30-minute prep call, I can understand faster, right?
Right.
So I think salespeople have to take a lot more initiative, right?
Yeah.
You know, as you know, is that we always hear this. There's a buying committee of blah 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 people, 6.42 times pi r squared, right?
That's the newest
And
number.
there's
Yes.
yeah, and the same, but we never talk about it. It's the same on the selling committee side too. And I think there's a disconnect, and some of it's a compensation issue because salespeople are like, I don't like that kind of stuff. So, first thing is salespeople got to relax, take control, or I'm sorry, let go of control. And then when they do it, and you tell me, I assume you've worked with salespeople by the second or third or fourth time you work with them. You got your groove down. It's easy. You know what to say. She knows what to say, right? And just figure that stuff out sooner. That's the
Yeah.
first thing. Um,
Yeah.
on the flip side, I would say for the sales engineers to say, hey, before we have this 30-minute conversation, what don't I know that I should know? Right. And I'm not asking people to start sharing diatribe emails. I'm asking for things to be just communicated. And if anything, I believe that even if very little is exchanged in a email notification of, hey, here's something you should know, or here's, and you just say, nah, we'll just cover it in the meeting. I think that even helps a little bit too, because you've at least now started to establish a little rapport before that first conversation. So I'll shut
Right.
up there, but I,
No. So I agree with everything you said. Full disclosure, I was transitioned out of sales engineering and into sales like a couple years ago, so I've
good
seen
for
both
you.
sides.
Yeah. So
Uh,
what did I get wrong? So tell me what I missed. Tell me, say, well, here's something else, Richard, because I've never
so
been that role. Like, what should I know about your role to make me better at helping you?
so the biggest thing I think you kind of mentioned it about speeding up. Salespeople do like they can do work in 5 minute increments, calling this customer, calling that customer, right? We can you
Right.
can do that. Whereas SEs, there's nothing less than 30 to 40 to an hour long
Right.
tasks, right?
Right.
So the expectation that we just get like, hey, oh, I sent you
Yeah.
this request and
Yeah.
why isn't there an answer?
Yeah.
That's sometimes weird. And also, I've been in situations where I'm an enterprise SE. I cover my customers locally, or I was,
Right.
and a customer would email me, and my salesperson would say, "Drop everything and go visit them." And in my head, it's like, what if they're not at their desk, right? So there's a bit of misunderstanding. But on the opposite side, like I want to, like, in defense of salespeople, which is not something I like to say. You said relinquish, like, let go of a little bit of control. I find it very hard for salespeople, and I'm learning why, to relinquish control. One, mainly we're incentivized on closing deals, and two, there are many SE. There are maybe 20% of SEs in the world that are good, 50% that are okay, and many that are horrible.
Yeah.
That can lose you deals. So
Yeah.
letting
Yeah.
go of control is a little bit difficult.
Yeah. I agree. I'm glad you were sharing that because it made me think of something is that the balance that I see, and I'd love your opinion, is that engineering minds, and I don't care if they're a sales engineer or they're the founder of the organization, love to show every little thing so often, right?
Yes.
And salespeople are like, no, don't do that. Like I was working with a client the other day, and we were presenting something to Databricks, and they were like, here, we're going to show them this, and we're going to show them how they upload their data. And I'm like, hold on, who's the audience? It's a VP, it's a sales tool. They're like, oh, it's a VP of sales and a CRO. I'm like, do you really think the CRO cares how you upload an Excel spreadsheet? Like they do not care. I promise you. If they do care, they will ask
Yeah.
you. They give them the wow. And so I think that's one of those little niches where sales and this engineering role need to come together a little better because
Yeah.
it's not and I had to tell the guys, I'm like, guys, I get it. This is your baby. You built it. You know this. You know it intimately.
Yeah.
But they don't care. They're not talking to you to add. Nowhere did they ever say, we'd love to see how you upload data. No, they
Yeah.
want to see how it works with their sales team. So
It's
finding that balance is critical in my opinion.
well. Are you familiar with the sliding scale of SE skills?
No clue.
If you look at the sliding scale, like you can see, like some SEs are very salesy and some SEs are very technical, and the good SEs are somewhere in the middle.
Right.
But a lot of companies hire SEs because they're technical,
Yes.
right? And
That's
now,
not the right thing.
and that their area of comfort is uploading Excel spreadsheets into the tool versus
Yes.
talking about like the value of uploading it
Right.
into the.
Yeah.
So that's a work in progress, and I think there's a lot of shifting. It's changing a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, look, I think, and I say this to, I don't care what industry you're in or what, I don't care if you're in marketing, IT, whatever, everybody's in sales. Like at some point you're the IT person. Well, you got to sell internally why this project needs to be done over that project.
Yes.
And you have to explain the value of this project over that project. That's all we're doing. Like there's no, it's not a dirty word. It's like, look, anybody who had to convince their parents where they could go for spring break in college, guess what? You're in sales. I don't care.
Sales.
You didn't even have a job at that point, except, fun, and make sure you graduate.
Yeah. Well, you want a raise, it's a sales job. You want a job, it's a sales job, right?
Yeah.
And that's something. So I'm an engineer by trade. Like I studied communications engineering. I did support. I did network design. I never thought I would want to talk to a salesperson, let alone be one.
Right.
And through my journey as an SE, I've worked with good salespeople and I've worked with horrible salespeople.
Yes.
And I can see why people think sales is evil, because there are some really bad ones that give everybody else a bad name. I worked with one.
Yeah.
But then I worked with a good one as well.
Yeah.
So,
look, everybody remembers a bad experience more than the good experience. We love to go tell everybody about the food poisoning story we got at the really nice restaurant that one time. But we don't ever tell the other 4 restaurants we've been to in the last month. Right? We love negativity. As humans, we are predisposed to enjoying negativity, which frustrates me in a whole other podcast level. So
yeah, we can have another session for that. I feel like that'll be a therapy session more than anything.
Totally.
So so right now as a salesperson, I'm working with SEs, and some SEs drive me bananas. And I've also had to figure out, like, not every SE works the same way. So when you're working with SEs, how do you figure out what this SE is good at and what they're bad at, and how do you compensate if you can?
Yeah, I think so. most of the time, not always, by the time you're at an organization where you have an SE, it's a slightly larger organization, right? And so,
Unfortunately, yes.
yeah, right. So for me, that starts at the top. That starts at the top where the head of sales and the head of the sales engineering team or the managers need to understand the product, the layout, the pitch, like the whole process, right, of how to pitch the product. And
Yeah.
then having a real assessment of saying, hey, you know what? Richard's really good at this part or handling these kinds of objections. So and so is really good at this part, right? And so it starts at the top to bleed down, right? And so the communication goes there. Then I think, again, a good salesperson would say, hey, how do you like to operate in these calls? Or for me, I would say something like this. I'd be like, hey, just so you know, here's how I traditionally do my calls, right? I have this introduction. It's because I actually micromanage myself. It's, this many minutes of this, obviously there'll be an introduction of you. We're going to discuss their pain. I know these are the things they want to do. How does this work for you? Do you like this flow? Would you like a different flow? Is there something you've seen work better? The, so I think the first thing is just this communication early on to understand it. And over time, you will find out where people suck at each thing. Like it's just the way it is,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's just the way it is. And you have to be able to have a dialogue to say, hey, I think we missed this here, right? And that's
Yeah.
the part that comes from the top. That's the part where the leaders need to be able to say, hey, everybody, we want to all close deals. We know something's going to miss. When it
Yeah.
misses, we'll figure it out, but let's figure out how to do it so that we can not make that mistake next time.